Okay, so we're going to talk about women in Rotary. It was really, the first diversity Rotary dealt with. Oh, we talked today about DEI. DEI then was men and women, was gender diversity that Rotary was dealing with. And, here we are now, edge of tomorrow. Okay. And it used to be tomorrow when polio is eradicated. Well, now polio is almost eradicated. It's only endemic in 2 places now. But we have something else to worry about. We're worrying about the pandemic. We're worrying about the coronavirus, which is throughout the world, and which Rotary is also taking some uh, helpful hands in. Okay, so also, it's about 35 years since women have been accepted into Rotary. It didn't come easily. It didn't come easily. Okay. Uh, and a lot of people, especially young people today, have no idea that there was a time when women couldn't be Rotarians. Women couldn't be Rotarians. See, I knew because I was invited by the superintendent of schools. I was a new principal in the district, and I was interested in how the community was, because when you go into a new community, you want to know what kinds of homes kids are coming from, what kind of training they're getting at home, what they need, what their parents need, and so on. And so I went and talked to my superintendent about that, and he said, "You don't need to worry about anything. We have a Rotary Club here, and you're going to be in Rotary, and we'll take care of the whole thing." Well, geez, what did I know about Rotary? I'd never heard about Rotary. What I knew about Rotary then could have been loosely written on the head of a pin. I didn't know much. Most of you, when you hear about when you're invited to join Rotary, probably have no idea what it's all about. I knew about Kiwanis. You know what Kiwanis means? It means waiting to get into Rotary. Well, a Kiwanis will tell you that story. We work with Kiwanis clubs in our district. But I also knew about Elks because, somebody mentioned I lived in New York City. You can't walk down 42nd Street without walking into Elks wearing those beautiful hats. You say, "Who are those people?" And somebody says, "Oh, they're Elks." And you say, "Yeah, oh, okay, they're Elks." But I also knew about Lions because I was a school person. And if any of you are in school, you know that the Lions provide eyeglasses, eye care for the kids in school. So Rotary was new to me, but I knew that in my district, they were in a struggle with my club because of what the superintendent had done. Okay, so Duarte, and I'll tell you a little bit about the legal wrangling and some of the funnier experiences that I had. Duarte is a little bedroom community in the San Gabriel Valley. Probably about the best way to identify it for you is that it's probably about maybe 10, 15 miles east of Pasadena, where the Rose Parade used to come from, came from every year until this year. But Pasadena, most people know where Pasadena is because the Rose Bowl game is there and so on. It also, the largest business in Duarte was the school district. The Duarte Unified School District was Duarte and Monrovia. And also, some of you may know about it, the City of Hope Cancer Hospital. That was another big business. But in this district was a small club, struggling as we all do to raise a membership. And I want you to remember that it was a membership issue with which we were working. And that's what got us into this. We were trying to get members. So the year was 1976. And the superintendent of schools, who deserves all the credit for this action, Dick passed away many years ago. But it was Dick's idea to invite women to Rotary because you can't join Rotary unless you've been invited. And if there are no women in there, who's going to invite you? Well, a man. So Dick invited us to join Rotary because he looked around and he saw all these manager types. And at that time, 1976, they were all manager types in Rotary, CEOs, big business managers in Rotary. I mean, you have psychologists, you have reporters, you have principals, all of them. But you know what? They were all women. And Dick didn't know any women in Rotary, but he thought, why not? So he went and he talked to the district governor and he said, I really want to invite some women to join the Rotary because I have all these high-powered women in my district. They would make good Rotarians. So he asked the district governor what he thought. But we won't tell you who the district governor was because he didn't pass the four-way test. He said, I think that's a good idea. You can invite the women, but I'll tell you what, when you register them, when you send their names in to international, don't send their full names. S. Whitlock could be Sydney Whitlock. M. Elliott could be Michael Elliott. No one will know. We'll just send initials. And well, you know what? That was designed to deceive. It didn't pass the four-way test. I'm embarrassed to say. However, that's what Dick did. He sent in the names to uh, international. Well, that action was not without its dissenters. In fact, we had one club member who said he could see the death of the club. And you know what? He was well trained to recognize death because when he resigned, as he did, we had a classification open for undertaker. However, the woman came in, and they did everything that, that everybody does in Rotary. I mean, they had yard sales, they made snow cones for the city picnic. This is a small community, had breakfast with Santa Claus. We just had breakfast with Santa Claus. And we're looking forward now to breakfast with the Easter Bunny. And we do that for the kids, and the club provides that for the kids. We also made Thanksgiving baskets for needy families and for cancer survivors. They also got busy planning their first event, which was the 25th anniversary of the club. And Rotary, as it always does to recognize these milestones, sent some representatives to Duarte to our party to enjoy the celebration with us. So the festivities were on. They were all there. And at the party, the women were introduced. Well, you could tell just by looking at the people there. And so they said, women, we don't have women in Rotary. And somebody said, this club does. Well, they stayed until the party was over. They didn't make a fuss. They stayed until the party was over. And then they went back to Evanston. And it didn't take long before we got a letter from Evanston that said, three things. There are no women in Rotary. Number two, the women need to be asked to leave. Number three, if the women don't leave, the club may not call itself a Rotary Club. It's not a Rotary Club because Rotary Clubs don't have women. So those three things, the women need to be asked to leave because there are no women in Rotary. And if they don't leave, you can't call yourself a Rotary Club. Well, the club took a vote and decided it would not ask the women to leave. After all, they were doing all the work. Well, it asked to appeal to the board of directors. And it was told only real Rotary clubs can appeal to the board of directors. And if women are there, it's not a real Rotary club. So the board of directors wouldn't hear it. So it asked to appeal to the Council on Legislation. And of course, you can talk to the Council on Legislation. So the Council on Legislation was meeting that year in Tokyo. So one member was chosen. However, it was an interesting situation when it came up because it was not the issue over whether women should be admitted to Rotary, but it was whether the Rotary Club of Duarte had violated Rotary's bylaws by inviting women. And, of course, they have. And so the vote against women, the vote was resulted in against women in Rotary, was 1,000 to 34. Imagine there were 34 people there who thought women should be in Rotary. Well, I met one of them in Calgary. in the 80s when the convention was in Calgary. I was on a train riding into the convention center. I had some friends who lived up in Calgary. And I was sitting across from a gentleman and his wife, and they were tagged as I was, and you know how you read everybody's tags when you're at a convention. And so they read my tag. And the gentleman said to me, "You from the club that tried to get women in Rotary?" Smiling, I said, "Yeah, and we did." Well, he said, "I was at the convention in Tokyo, and I voted to have women in Rotary because I always thought they should be there." And his wife was sitting quietly next to him and looked up and said, "Well, I didn't think so then, and I don't think so now." And I thought, "Why?" And she said, "You know what? We have men going out to meetings at night and, meeting with women. We don't know what's going on. It's better the way it is." Well, I didn't argue with her. I tried to explain that it was not a social club. It was a service club. She didn't want any part of it. But here's a little known bit of information. In the 1950s in Detroit, a club from India had put an item to change the bylaws about women on the agenda. And of course, they just kind of laughed it down. It was defeated, and the club didn't press it. But even more interesting, the first Rotary Constitution did not specify that Rotarians had to be men. It just said persons of good character. But that was a time when there were few women in the workaday world. And because men were the ones engaging in fellowship and business activities, bylaws evolved into men of good character. If I could ask Paul Harris a question today, it would be, would you have intentionally excluded women from Rotary? Well, there's a Paul Harris room in Evanston with a larger than life Paul Harris figure. And I went up to him and I said, "Would you have excluded women from Rotary?" He didn't say a single word, not a word. Well, Jack Davis, who was president of Rotary International at the time, said Rotary International was jeopardized by the unilateral move of the Dwighty Club. Can you believe that? I don't think. Well, they sent a delegation to Dwighty and asked that we return our charter. And so we had to give up the charter. And Bill Brooks, who worked at the City of Hope Hospital, said, "That's okay. Look at the charter. We know what we're doing in the community. We know what we're doing. We'll just rename ourselves the ex-Rotary Club of Dwighty. We'll just put an X over the Rotary icon. Can you see it?
Oh my gosh.
Let's put an X over the Rotary icon and we'll call ourselves the ex-Rotary Club of Dwighty." That's what we did. And we
Wow.
were ex-Rotary Club of Dwighty for 11 years. Can you believe 11 years? It took 11 years for us to get this stuff through the court. Okay, so a Rotarian gentleman from a neighboring club. Remember I said this was a membership thing. So a Rotarian gentleman from a neighboring club, Sanford Smith from the Arcadia Club said, "I think we can go to court and pressure Rotary into admitting women." So we prepared to take it to California courts. And Rotary objected and they petitioned that the case be heard in federal court because, as I said, not all members of the board of directors are Californians. But you see, there had been a precedent in federal court where a New York club had been seeking exclusionary rights for private club membership. And the federal court ruled that the case should be heard in a California court. Well, it was first heard by the California Superior Court, which, in short order, upheld Rotary's right to expel the club. And so we were shocked. That was our first shock. Because we think, the service club, who's going to say no? Well, we knew we were going to have to regroup. And so Sanford said, we need to take a serious look at this. and said, we'll appeal this case. We'll go to the California Appellate Court. And so Sanford looked into the law and found out there was an act in California that you may have in Texas and probably in a lot of places that bans discrimination in public accommodation. And Rotary was deemed to be a public accommodation because of the classification system that got people from all these different areas, and the fact that at that time, 80% of the members had their dues paid by their employers. So Sanford appealed to the California Appellate Court, and they listened to the case based on the Unruh Act, and the Superior Court's ruling was reversed. Well, Rotary wasn't going to sit down and take this just thing. So they immediately appealed to the California Supreme Court, but that court refused to hear the case, which essentially was affirming the decision of the California Appellate Court. But now, remember, this decision, California Appellate Court, is incumbent on all California courts, but only California. So we moved on. However, before women, things change very slowly. Okay. This was the year in which I was a president-elect. And so I was invited to attend PETS. Well, you know, the district had a whole bunch of cards, invitations to send out to people to attend PETS. And they all had a reminder that said, remember to bring your coat and tie to PETS because director pictures will be taken. Well, what could I do? I took my coat and tie. And in my coat and tie, I was the only woman there with 290 men. You know, I was a school principal, so it was okay. I was there. The nicest thing about that proportion, 290 men and one woman, was that during restroom breaks, didn't have to worry about it. There were long lines outside the men's restroom, and I could just sashay past. Hey, this was 35 years ago. I could still sashay. I could just sashay past into the ladies' restroom. There was not even one female speaker at this fest, but most of the men were cordial, very polite, and very interested in what was going on. They were very friendly. So at the section on Rotary International, I heard our incoming governor, I won't name him either, but he's a friend of mine, incoming governor discuss the case and tell us that Rotary International will appeal to the United States Supreme Court, and we have every reason to believe we will. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Hey, I was a principal. I knew a little bit about the Supreme Court. I knew about Roe versus Wade. I knew about the Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. I didn't think an issue having to do with women joining a service club would even be looked at by the United States Supreme Court. But I was so wrong. I was so very wrong because I was not thinking about this as a civil rights issue. I was thinking about this as an issue, not a civil rights issue. And that was so wrong because that was the big deal. So he said, our district governor said, hey, director referring to the size of our club, he said, oh, it's just the case of the mouse that roared. There were 15 people making a big noise. Well, I was sitting in the room making furious notes. So I, made these notes on my paper that said, ex-Rotary Club of Duarte, the mouse that roared. And I have to show you, we have a mouse pin. We have a mouse pin. He had a Rotary icon on its back. The mouse that roared. Well, Rotary did appeal. And of course, the United States Supreme Court did take the case. One of our attorneys said in their comment on the case that is so common in this description, he said, you know what, they're forcing us to take everybody in, just like a motel. Okay. RI's argument was that the ruling violated their First Amendment's right of association. Supreme Court did take the case. And on May the 4th, 1987, not even a year after, the court found that considering the size, purpose, selectivity, and exclusivity of Rotary's members, the relationship among the club's members was not of the intimate or private variety which warrants First Amendment protection. That was their opinion. So Justice Powell wrote for the unanimous court. Sandra Day O'Connor did not vote because her husband was a Rotarian, and there were other things that you worry about. Well, Justice Powell argued that many of Rotary's activities, including their meetings, are conducted in the presence of strangers. And because women members would not prevent the club from carrying out its purposes, there was no violation of associational rights. Furthermore, he said, and this is the paragraph on which the whole thing sat. Furthermore, he said, even if there were a slight encroachment on the rights of Rotarians to associate, that minimal infringement would be justified, since it serves the state's compelling interest in ending sexual discrimination. That was their opinion. And there it was. And now this decision was incumbent on all USA Rotary clubs, all USA Rotary. So this is when it really started to get kind of crazy. I was driving to my job as principal of an elementary school when the news came over there. Said, here we are on the West Coast, and the news came on the East Coast. So it's 3 hours later, and I'm driving on the freeway, and I heard the news. I couldn't believe we had an opinion so quickly. And I almost stopped on the freeway. So I'm looking around to see if anybody else is listening to the, how could I tell? Well, some 20 minutes later, I arrived at school. So did all the media in the world. They were all standing, all these cameras and things in front of the school, and the kids wondering, hey, what happened here? Well, our superintendent, who was a smart man, after all, he invited women to Rotary. Our superintendent said he called Mary Lou and me, and he said, you guys need to come up to the district office because Warren Olney, you remember Warren Olney, he interviews for NPR. He was a CBS newscaster then, and he was interviewing for the networks, for the media. He said, you need to come up to the district office so school can go on. So we picked up our things and we went to the district office and sat in the boardroom. And I was asked many questions. I was asked a lot of questions because I was the incoming president. So I was the person with the Rotary rant that they wanted to talk with. So I was asked many questions to which I gave studied and intelligent answers, I thought. Near the end of the interview, in fact, we were already on our feet. This was almost 4 hours. We were already on our feet. I was asked how I got selected to be president. That's one of those questions you never ask a Rotarian because they have this dumb answer. So in a decidedly careless and unstudied moment, I said, oh, I don't know. I must have missed a meeting. I can't believe to this day, I can't believe I said that. That evening, the story was the top of the news. The first item on the news, it was such a big story. It was the top of the news, including my inane and embarrassing response. Oh, I don't know. I must have missed the meeting. And people out there saying, for 11 years, we waited for this. Well, I started to learn then of the capriciousness of the media. I knew I was going to have to adopt a more serious. Back at the club, we had to move our meeting place because we couldn't accommodate the press and the visitors from all over the world who wanted to come and see this club that got women into Rotary. Well, they were ever so curious. I learned how to be circumspect in any and all answers that I would give about this case. And this was my year as incoming president, so I had to settle into the goals we had set, which that year included Polio Plus. Polio Plus has gone through this whole time while the whole world was watching. We had some interesting telephone calls, including one that asked if the food were any better now that there were women in Rotary. And I said, no, because we're not cooking it. Some were decidedly pleasant. And some could classify as DEI discussion. Well, we didn't get a welcome back from Rotary International, but we did get a new due schedule. And in 1989, imagine it took that two more meetings of the council legislature, following an impassioned speech by Frank Devlin, who died last year. The council legislation voted to accept women members into Rotary. But now this was 1987. And think about it. It was not until April 2004, 17 years later, that the Rotarian printed several articles about women in Rotary. They pouted for a long time before they printed. And then I was asked to be the centerfold. But I was told that we were back to the left, up to here. So it wasn't going to be a racist centerfold. Not that I could provide it. So Rotary has removed, finally, the last vestiges of sexist language so that now they profit most and serve the best. And even more new, a club may not be chartered unless its membership is open to both men and women. This didn't start as a women's issue, but as a simple attempt to recruit more members into Rotary. How successful has that been? Can men and women work together? They have for 35 years. That was the beginning of my journey through the humanitarian organization that is Rotary. The realization of the opportunity to serve in an ever shrinking world, the opportunity to meet men and women who can see and articulate a need and its solution, no matter how difficult the way or how meager. Former RI President Malchi Agbi said, women serve alongside men in every segment of life, in education, in medicine, in warehouses, and in construction. Why not in Rotary? So I was in an incredibly fortunate place when this all happened because it has brought such bounty into my life. I've served my district in many positions, and I have been district captain. And I've made up in many, many places. I traveled a lot until the pandemic took over. In fact, my first makeup internationally was in the Rotary Club of Clapham in London, where Queen Elizabeth and I were toasted on the same glass of champagne, the same glass of champagne. So my small club went on to sink water wells in Nigeria, establish AIDS clinic in Jamaica, support an orphanage in Mexico, all the NID stuff that we have done here, and so on. There's very little that compares with the feeling that through Rotary, you may have saved the life of that child into whose mouth you placed those inoculated drops and contributing to the eradication of a dread disease. The only other dread disease ever eradicated before this was smallpox. And now it will be interesting. Coronavirus probably will rank up there with the dread disease. And of course, all of these are done with the help of the Rotary Foundation, which provides the backbone for humanity. And I tell people, in fact, I told my club the year I was district governor, that all you need to do is save a quarter a day in a little piggy bank, and you can make a sizable dent in what the foundation needs. We're working on polio because we remember when polio was present everywhere. Remember when swimming pools in New York were closed because there was polio around. But when we succeed in eradicating polio with the help of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, WHO, UNICEF, and CDC, all of which have now been brought back into the fold, it would only have been the second disease wiped out from the face of the earth. In India, when we did NIVs, I met Rotarians to whom service about self is a creed by which they live daily. Deepa Willingham started a school in India called Piali Learning Center, a school that we collected money the year I was district governor, and we collected $90,000 to build a beautiful four-story building in a little village called Piali Junction, which accommodates 200 girls, some of whom had never been to school before they were 10 and 11 years old, and who are learning now and taking Cambridge school exams and all the exams. So, you know, I kind of try to live out the creed of my grandmother. She was a really helpful, which I'd never heard about service about self, but she taught me how to do that. And I believe until we meet the needs of people for food, clothing, shelter, clean water, healthcare, education, improved environment, all the basics, there's no place in which they can receive and absorb and respect the concept. So, Education for Girls by Deepa Willingham is my signature. We we realize over the years, I have learned over the years that my community is not just the residential area in which I live, or the town that supports it, or even the state that governs it. We are citizens of the world, where every action, however remote or seemingly far remote, has a ripple effect on us and all others. Listen to the news from around the world and look at the effect it has on us. To the extent that they are well, we are well. Martin Luther King's reminder is to ask ourselves each day, what have we done to help some? Much is given, much is expected. But attracting members to help us do the good work is the key. We wear Rotary pins as ID pins. But can anyone noticing your pin tell that it says Rotary International? And if they can, do they know what Rotary International is? Well, I fly a lot, mostly in airplanes. At least I did before the pandemic. And a good way to attract somebody's attention is to just drop your pin on the floor. You know, I don't know, unless you're Simone Biles or a contortionist, you can't get that pin up. You ever drop anything on the floor in front of you on the airplane? Here. Almost impossible to retrieve your pin. Now, if somebody in the seat next to you would make a good Rotarian, they would ask you if they could help you to get your pin. Well, in the process, stop to explain what is so important about the pin and what Rotary represents. And give them that little blue card that says, what is Rotary? And find out where they live so you can have somebody call them and invite them to join Rotary. One more person, one at a time, is all you've done. Well, if you don't have that little card, write a little elevator speech. Write it tonight if you don't have one. Right after you take off your Rotary pin and put it on your pajamas. Your pajamas? Yes. Explain to the person who's sitting next to you how important you think Rotary is. And the next day around the water cooler or the coffee machine, I bet they will laugh about it, the wearing of the pin. But the bottom line is that somebody will say, Rotary, what's Rotary? And they will take time to tell somebody else about Rotary. Few more people will have heard, maybe attracted to them. So I'm a Rotarian, and with other Rotarians in this ever shrinking world, will work to make it a happier place, cleaner, more self sustaining, and more peaceful than it was when we came into it. I will support the fact that Rotary functions on the edge of tomorrow, a tomorrow into which we can just catapult aimlessly or carefully negotiate entry. And as we work and try to engage young people, they need to be included in service now. It's right for us to focus on that new generation with all their energy and zeal, fine men and women of character, who in service about self will know that they profit most, serve the best, and they will wholeheartedly engage Rotary balance. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. That was so amazing. Uh,
Thank you.
wow, so many jewels dropped. Just thank you for being a pioneer woman and charting the way. I couldn't imagine Rotary. I probably wouldn't have joined if no women were involved. And I'm so happy that I could share this organization with my wife, and we serve together. And so thank you for leading the way. And the innovative approaches, even down to the pins with the X's on them. That was so amazing. But that just shows the fortitude and the resilience that it takes to make great change happen. And so I'm inspired, and I admire you for everything that you've done. So thank you on behalf of all of the.
If you want to read about it or put it in your raffle bag, there's a book,
There
Women
you
Who
go.
Serve. All the proceeds from this go to the foundation. All you have to do is write to me and ask me, and I will send them to you. For $20 each, you may have
Yeah, thank you.
$20 goes to the foundation.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. So the floor is open for questions for Dr. Whitlock. We'll take about 3 or 4 questions. So not all at once, but there's a raise your hand option, or you can just put your question in the chat if you have any. Feel free to just ask the question now.
The question that people ask me most of all when I talk about this is, did you guys ever think about giving up? Did you just figure 11 years, who's going to go? No, we never did. Because we just did what Rotarians do as community people, and we thought we'll just wait it out. We never thought about giving it up. Rotarians don't give up.
I love that. 17 years. 17 years. Dan Clark has a question. Hi, Dan.
Dr. Whitlock, thank you very much for joining us this evening. I found your presentation just amazing. I'm so happy that you joined Rotary, and I can tell you that in my club, probably over the last 10 years, 8 of our club presidents have been ladies, and we've done a lot more in those 8 years than the 2 years that myself and one other man has been the president. I wanted to ask you, so do you know what the club is now in Duarte, the size of Duarte?
Yes. Yeah, the size of the club, there's probably about 25, 30 people now, and just as many women as there are men. And the club is really busy. It does everything the way we always did.
Wonderful.
I go to their meetings every Wednesday morning.
Wonderful.
I'm
Thank
an
you.
honorary member of their club now.
Dr. Whitlock, I'd like to tell you that I think, if I'm correct, the first woman president in our district was from Eagle Pass, and her name was Charlotte Banks. And it was in the early 1990s.
Okay.
Charlotte had a real estate agency in Eagle Pass, a lovely, lovely woman. And we were very, very proud to elect her as our president.
Really good. There's a high-powered club in Los Angeles, the Wilshire Club. And that club in the last 5 years have had 5 female presidents under the age of 40. And that was a club that didn't even have men some years ago. And now they've embraced the idea of men and women in Rotary together. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. DG Christie, she said Rotary's initiative, and this is amazing, for 2021 through 2022, is to empower girls. The goal is for clubs to have 50% women and 50% men. I think that's amazing. You're getting that.
There are about 32% of the Rotarians in the US are women. Around the world, it's about maybe 27%. So there is still a way to go.
And I believe with technology, we can really push the envelope, make things happen even faster. As far as bringing folks around together and just sharing common knowledge, I think we can even we can do that. Maybe within the next 5 years, if we really put our minds
to really work at it. Right.
Absolutely. Any other questions for Dr. Whitlock?
I have just a comment, and I want to say that I came from a Rotary club in a different city that was mostly old men sitting around and throwing money at things. And when I came to the current club where I am, I was really excited about the fact that they put a focus on younger members. And I will tell you that really keeps a club alive, keeps them vibrant, do exciting things. And I'm so happy to see and Dr. Whitlock's focus also on younger people. I think that's the new focus after bringing women into Rotary, bringing younger people in, and it's really invigorated our club. So,
thank you for that. It's really pairing younger people and older people together is the best thing. But all the wisdom that people who have been in the club for a while have. And there's nothing to match social media skills that young people have. All the technology skills that they can teach us older guys. You think it's easy for me to deal with all this stuff, but yeah, all of us together can work together. And if you look today in a lot of communities where the representatives, legal representatives, and people in civic jobs are younger people, so they can work together. And there's so much that they have to learn from the older people. So it's a good deal. Good for everybody.
All right, I see PDG Lisa Herring has a question.
Thank you. I actually don't have a question. I have a statement. One of the things that I admire most about Dr. Sylvia is the fact that she didn't start this journey to make a big splash and make a big deal and have this case go to the Supreme Court. She just wanted to serve her community. And not only has she started that way, but her entire journey has been about service. And she's a beautiful and amazing, precious woman. And thank you for sharing your time with us.
Very well, Lisa. Your check is in the mail.
Great point.
And absolutely, and Lisa, just to share, not only do we have history with this, but now we know her story and we know what we can expect from the future as we do open opportunities and doors to those who want to serve with us. I don't think anyone should be denied the opportunity to service. I think everyone should be allowed to serve in a capacity, especially in a great organization like Rotary, because the world needs the work that we do and everyone needs the opportunity to serve. So let us continually open up those doors. Dan?
So Xavier, you can send me a list of the people. Someone wrote in the chat box. Just send me a list of people who want the books, what they want written in them, what they want written in the book, and I will mail it to one place. I'll mail it to you, and then you can take care of collecting.
Perfect. Well, you guys, I'll put my email address in here.
DG Xavier, I just wanted to mention that what Dr. Whitlock had started back in 1987, if I'm not mistaken, we have our first RI International president coming in.
Yeah,
I think in 22, 23, Jennifer
isn't that wonderful?
Jones from Canada.
And she's a good person, not because she's a woman, she's just a good Rotarian. Yes.
I met her actually here in San Antonio several years ago.
Yeah.
There was an RI event and she was just so down to earth.
Yes, she is.
But amazing lady just in the hour that I met her. So I'm looking forward to her year.
She is. No, I'm looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us this evening. I think everyone is
and thank you. And I'm going to check out now because I have to Zoom to my grandchildren.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you. So I'm going to put an email address in the chat box that you all can send information to if you want to get a book. That is the district secretary's email. I was going to put mine in there, but I'm getting too many emails I can't respond to. But I hope you all enjoyed the program this evening, and let's continue to open opportunities for those who just want to serve. And thank you all again for joining this evening.